So when the time came, my mother pressured me to go for that burial. She actually told me, a good friendship is known at a time like this. How can you fail to show up to support your friend at this time? Can you prepare and go? Now this was a day before the burial. So since I never learned how to argue, I prepared stiff nakedness and so much unwilling with the feeling that I still look ugly with my sunburns and not beautiful. I therefore prepared and left to her place then. By then they lived in town, and so I needed to leave earlier before the actual day. The day I arrived, I found they had a meeting in a certain hostel and for the final contribution to the burial, and her brother-in-laws were present. I knew no one apart from her and the husband. I was not used to spend night outside home, and so I was not really comfortable with the unknown people around me. As usual, I was ever quiet and never said anything unless I was asked. The following day, we went for the burial, and when everything was over, I opted to travel back home. But my friend requested me to remain with her till the next day. I would have accepted her request, but I was afraid of the environment where I was new and I didn't know what these people like or dislike, hence the cause of my discomfort around them. But I gave an excuse that my mother asked me to arrive on the same day before because she had somewhere to go the following day. Then when they knew I was leaving, one brother asked to escort me. I hesitated because with my sunburns I didn't think I would deserve his escort. I was still naive and I didn't know what I could talk with him or maybe answer him if he asks anything as we move on. Then I opted to hire a motorbike instead and leave. He seemed to be not comfortable with my decision, and so he asked me if we would pay on my behalf the transport fee. But I told him no. I was not secure, since I had not met him before or the family before, so to me I was like, I'm a stranger in their family. So my friend later told me that the brother-in-law asked her so much about me, and he wished to have my phone number, and I asked her not to share it with anyone. Needless to say, she told them, the brother-in-laws now, she told them that she is joining a convent soon, so that they should dare not think of anything. But this brother maneuvered until he reached me. My friend later told me that he asked the elder brother, her husband, who took my number from her phone, and asked me to meet him, though I didn't want to say yes or no. The first time he traveled all the way from the capital city to our local market, and I failed to show up, and he went back frustrated. But in my mind I was saying, I cannot date a Protestant because I won't be able to proceed with the sacraments of the Catholic Church. If I marry a Protestant, I won't be able to go for confession, I won't be able to go for Eucharist, I won't be able to do all the things I have been doing in the church. And by then, I was under the movement of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So I knew all these things I will stop and I won't get the blessings of the priest as I live for marriage life. So, after a long tug of war with him, I finally decided to meet him, and my main objective actually was to study him and quit. After meeting him for 4 times, I realized he was a good man with a big heart to persevere things. And on the 5th meeting, he asked me to meet his elder brother and wife. But still my prayer to God was, please give me the right husband, if this is your will for me. And after all that, we finally agreed to involve the parents, and the journey to marriage began. To be married by the same Protestant guy who I once never wished to meet. But when God decides, He really decides alone and on His own way. So, since there was a process of this marriage between a Catholic and a Protestant, he agreed to follow all the process needed for the two faiths to marry. We went all to the office of the parish priest, to the bishop, and all went well. I loved him than I never imagined, and our union was awesome. It was a very beautiful wedding. And even today, he is the love of my heart, and I honor him the way Christ honors his church. Now, a true Christian must meet ups and downs. After our wedding, my first pregnancy of 3 months shed, and I miscarried. I was lost deep in despair and frustrations, and I couldn't find the real comfort from him or my mother. I always tucked my face under pillows and cried to God for help. I remember telling God I only want my child back and not another one, but the one I have underwent severe pains to lose. No one could console me enough by then, even my sister-in-law. I once again reduced in shape due to stress and much thoughts I had by then. And that struck my mother so hard as well, as her girl kept on suffering yet. Everyone knew I was Mama's girl, so seeing her that way wasn't my situation and I needed to be cancelled. I could not get it right losing the first pregnancy, but with the time, I got to accept it all and embrace the will of God on that same. As some people are so eager to calculate for others after wedding, so they calculated a miss because they couldn't figure out the answers they got. They could see me 3, 4, 5 months or 6, and they couldn't see any promising weather. That is the pregnancy they were looking for. So according to their calculation, they were calculating that the wedding was this month. She's now supposed to be having a pregnancy of 2, 3, 4 or 5 months. So they talked and that she's unable to carry pregnancy. Something that struck me afresh once again. This reminded me, the child I lost, that if this child were inside my womb, these people wouldn't talk what they are saying now. But I had no one to tell my frustration to, if not God. He is actually the giver of life. And as new couples and so green to the marriage life, one can be frustrated easily. They could tell my husband even, the clothes she came with from her mother's place are the ones to wear even now. Why don't you buy new ones for her? By this they meant that I still remain the same as I was in my mother's place when I am supposed to be pregnant in marriage. These words again tore my heart into pieces. I could really pity my husband because he couldn't answer that. I witnessed him once crying his tears, and I felt like I have no need to live anymore if I will be just getting pregnancy and having miscarriages. And I could not see him suffer such words from people outside there. I think they were asking him so because they were not aware of the miscarriage, and according to the doctor, we were to take at least 6 months, a healing process after the miscarriage, before we try another pregnancy. My husband is an electrical engineer, and I remember this time he was sent by the company for 2 weeks to install their machines far away from the city where we lived. And I spent the 2 weeks in tears and in prayer. I decided to sleep on the floor and asking God to take away this shame from me. I ever used that time to go to the adoration whenever I could to the nearby church. Although my husband was a Protestant, he never fought my Catholic faith. He embraced it even to death. That church had a very beautiful chapel, and I remember the first time I entered there, I failed to contain my tears and was unable to hold them back. I cried until I was satisfied, and I felt like I disturbed those who had come to speak to Jesus there. But to my surprise, no one left the chapel or confronted me to keep quiet. I had no other alternative than to empty my broken heart to Jesus at that moment. I did the same for the 2 weeks when he was away, that is to go to adoration, and I tried to hide it all from anyone, even those who blasted my husband or me. And I loved to pray the prayer of St. Simon's Stock, the prayer that was given to him by the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel about the brown scapula. I decided to have a novena of the same prayer, and I always asked Blessed Virgin Mary to bless me with a child like the one she holds on her lap. There is that picture of Our Lady of Mount Carmel where she holds a scapula, she holds her son, and they are giving a scapula to St. Simon's Stock. So after the 2 weeks, my husband came back After a few weeks, I could experience dizziness at work. I thought it was all about the stress I had over conceiving. Some asked me to check my hemoglobin, for it may be so low and therefore cause the same. I even remember I fainted once at the workplace. I never had time to eat, even in the house. And when I tried to, I really forced it because I had no appetite at all. When it became worse, I had to go for a thorough checkup where the doctor said I was pregnant. In my mind, I never thought I would be pregnant. I never had an idea of becoming pregnant even, because I knew maybe always it will be a miscarriage. That was after a month, and I couldn't trace when I became pregnant. And even during my clinics, when the doctors and nurses used to ask the gestation period, I always guessed, and they wondered how come I didn't know. But even now I can faithfully say, I really don't know. I really don't remember when it happened. It was true, I didn't know. So, I was given a wrong D-Day by nurses because of the wrong information on the gestation. Immediately I realized I was pregnant. I went back to Our Lady of Mount Carmel and I told her, my mother, thank you for praying for me. And at this time I was still in tears. I couldn't imagine that my prayers have reached God. I beg you for a favor. Pray for me to God to put in my womb a baby boy, some bouncing like the one you hold on your laps. I'd like him to have Eritrean hair like mine, a left-handed boy and with a big space between his teeth, as I always admired such, and energetic. And also the boy who will grow to be an obedient boy, who will serve God in his holy place when he grows up as a priest, and who will have a special call like Padre Pio. But this pregnancy threatened to miscarry at 3 months. I remember that morning I woke up bleeding heavily, and I was so heartbroken that all the joy I had turned into tears once again. We had to rush to the hospital with my husband, where a gynecologist was attending me, and she confirmed that there was a serious danger. He took some tests and asked me to have a bed rest until 9 months. When the time to give birth came, I didn't know what were the signs of labor, so I began feeling unusual. Even the favorite food I had prepared, I didn't enjoy it that day. And I called my sister-in-law for help, and she told me, you better now prepare to go to the hospital just now before it gets worse. And due to fear that others would realize I'm in pain, I woke up, prepared myself and left to the hospital. So I walked for 2 hours and distance which should take around 20 minutes. I took 2 hours to reach to the hospital. This was because I was trying to hide that I was in pain. And whenever the pain was too much, I could just sit down on a scorching sun, trying all means to hide from people that all wasn't well. I was unable to move and trying to pretend I was so okay. But the baby inside the womb was really kicking hard, so the passers-by could ask me if I needed their help. And I always told them no, I'm okay. But you could see they were not okay with my answer. All that continued to the hospital until I reached there, where upon arriving, the nurse just realized I was in need. I found him sat with another patient near the door, and I didn't proceed to the receptionist. Instead, I sat down in a chair and I pretended to be okay. All I wanted to hide was the pain, and that people should not know that I was in labor. But what made me wake up from that chair was the movement of the baby inside, which turned my stomach to look like a rugby ball. And it stayed like that for some minutes. I could hide no more. The stretch of the baby led me sure I was in pain actually, because I could not pretend anymore. And so the nurse took me to a checkup room where they confirmed the path was opening up to some point. After some upstairs and downstairs exercise with the nurse, they chose to induce me as from 6 p.m. and I was in labor until 10:45 p.m. It reached a point where I called my husband and told him to take a scapula from the bag I had carried and put it around my neck. I was surely tired at this point, and the doctors suggested I should be taken to theater for a cesarean section with an immediate effect to save the baby or the mother. After my husband gave me the scapula and it was put on my neck, I told them to give me a last chance to push the baby. But in my mind, I wanted to tell my husband to take care of my baby when they succeed to have him alive. I told him, if he comes out alive, call him Jude. And these words seemed to have disturbed him so much. I knew I was going to die before I see him, but they asked me to push the baby once more. I then asked St. Jude to give me the last miracle and strength to push, and this is the time the baby came out. So when I was totally exhausted, it is when I managed to push out the baby. It followed that I had no milk to breastfeed the baby. This child cried day and night for 4 days with nothing on its stomach. My breast had nothing to help and had wounds and sores, which were so painful to be sucked, but I allowed it anyway because he was trying to suck and get something. I totally had no milk, and the baby's skin began to stick together. I could see his green veins just on his skin. He began to be emaciated. The skin began to look like an old person, and with the bones began to appear. And so the child changed in those 4 days. I had no one around me. There were people, but there were no relative or anyone to tell me anything about a newborn or what to do with a newborn, as I was a first-time mother and my husband being a first-time father. On the 5th morning, I woke up and took my son to the same hospital where I gave birth. He had no voice to cry at all, and I knew my child was dying when all the pain I experienced during birth was so fresh even. I cried uncontrollably, and I called St. Jude once again. So we were new to the new town, and we were not aware of the hospitals nearby. We were just guided by someone. It was just by good luck that my husband was wondering what to do because someone asked him, I can see you are having a patient here. What is it? He told him he's looking for a better hospital to take her 4-day son. And this person decided to take us in his car to a big children's hospital in that region, and the baby was admitted there. The next challenge now was there were no tests to be taken from our son, even from the urine, because the child had no liquids in the body. The blood sample was also not enough for them to carry out any tests. So he was admitted with immediate effect and was put on drip throughout the night. But even before the admission of our son, we were to give at least $400 for admission, and we had no coin at all, either with us or back at home. But this man, upon hearing that, he decided to give the hospital cash for us to admit the baby. We stayed in the hospital for 8 days and we were released to go home. Now my son looked better, looked beautiful, so handsome. I could cry tears of joy. But again, I cried to St. Jude all through because I could not breastfeed my son throughout the night. The child is asleep. I don't know whether he will wake up, and I had that fear. And that was the time I cried to St. Jude thoroughly, asking him to protect my son, to heal my son, to revive my son, to give back my son. All those tears were contributed by the thought of, I have not forgotten the pain and the experience of giving birth. And now he is going away from me. What will I do? And so, from this experience, I truly see God the approachable God, even through his saints. Thank you, St. Jude, for saving my son. Today, I can say my son has all the qualities I asked Blessed Virgin Mary. And I know those long-term qualities also I asked for. I'm very much certain that God will bring them into fruition at the right time. Now, when my son was 1, I remember approaching his father for baptism, to be baptized in Catholic Church. And he told me that in their church, they don't baptize little children until they themselves go through their catechism and be baptized. This struck me again. I kept quiet and being unable to argue. I took my time, and when he was out, I could get a good chance to cry. Then when I finished crying, I decided to take that petition to God. So I began praying for a Mass every first Friday of the month and a daily rosary. I went back to him again after 1 year with the same request, and his response was the same. I kept the tradition of the Mass every first Friday of the month and the rosary as well, and I was also praying to the souls in purgatory for their help on the same issue. That was for another year. I therefore went back to him again after that year, and upon asking him the same question, and I asked him, "Sweetheart, don't forget that the baptism is the descending of the Holy Spirit in our lives. Remember, I and you are baptized, and this child is not baptized. We are not God and we don't know how long He has given us to be with His Son. So why don't you let him be baptized? Or do we worship different gods in our churches?" He asked, "When do you want him baptized?" I really took a deep breath and I hesitated to answer him immediately at the moment because of excitement and shock at the same time. And I was so cautious not to show excitement. And I then told him, "Okay, whenever you give me an okay, I will work on the rest." He then told me to tell him on his son's baptism so as to prepare. And sure enough, I told him and he prepared for his baptism. Now my son is 7 years and 2 months old. I have tried several pregnancies only to end with miscarriages. I sometimes feel I am worn out in grieving my babies through miscarriages. But I have offered it to the Lord for the salvation of the souls, mostly who embrace abortion willingly, and those terminated souls in their womb. I have lost 3 pregnancies in 1 year. That was the year 2020. And the year 2021, I still lost another pregnancy. I tried to be pregnant after every loss because I was really in need and I had asked God about it. Whenever I confirmed my pregnancies, I could go to Jesus and seek His will about it. And He could tell me, "This pregnancy will shed, but trust in me." And sure enough, and to my shock, whenever He gave me such a message, it really happened within 24 hours. I would wake up early in the morning with bleeding, or sometimes a very severe abdominal pain. Upon going to check what is going on, I could find it is the one. And so my mind could ring back, "Oh, I was prepared about it." I found God so much approachable at this time, and I was so much heartbroken, and He prepared me for the worst and helped me in my situation. Because if it were to happen without any word from Him, I don't know where I would be. But I am still waiting for His time to bless me with another child. Brethren, though I await at His time, I still cry for my babies whenever I remember those situations. Please, help me in your prayers whenever you pray that He would bless me soon. But I never lost hope in Him. If it is not His will to bless me that soon, I still bless His name. May His name be praised. It's my prayer that one day, one time, my tears will be presented in a chalice before the high thrones of God, and they will find favor to be answered. And apart from finding God the approachable Father, I can say He has also blessed me with other gifts, especially in visions. I have prayed to Him to bless me with some gifts of the Holy Spirit, and I have seen this come true as well. So my heart glorifies God for being a Father who is so much approachable in all the situations I have shared with you guys. He has helped me also come out victorious as well. So may His name be praised. Thank you, Lord, for your love and for all those who have helped me to share my experience, my journey with you, and how approachable you are. Love you all, guys.